Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So what is mob herd mentality?
So mob mentality is essentially when kids, they kind of just follow the group. They're not thinking rationally or critically. They're not thinking about if it's a good decision or the right decision. They're just following the group. And it's usually kind of coming from an emotional place, a place of wanting to belong with the rest of the group.
What influences this kind of behavior?
There's a lot of things that go into that. So for most kids and for most people in general, we want to feel like we belong. We want to be liked, we want to connect, especially for kids, that's something that's really important to them. So they're influenced by that factor. They also have a really hard time kind of putting themselves out there and being vulnerable. They don't want to be the one person that doesn't agree. So they typically just follow because it's easier. And the biggest part of that is it's very easy for them to camouflage with the group. So it's very easy for them not to think they're going to get in trouble because he did it first or somebody else was doing it too. So it's easier for them to hide their identity in those situations.
This is a big issue in Canada, in this area of Toronto GTA.
It's a pretty big issue. To be honest, I think we're seeing it a lot more online now with teens. There is that mob mentality online and just the bullying that we're seeing there and the comments and the sharing and retweeting. So it's definitely something that's happening, but I think we are seeing it a lot more online than in the playgrounds.
So why do we not see this when an individual is alone?
Alone, well, it's similar to, like, even if you think of like the Raptors games or if we're at a concert, when we're with people, we feed off of their energy, right? So if we're in a group of people and they're getting upset, then we start getting upset. So when we're alone, there isn't that energy to feed off of. We're also alone, so we need to make our own decisions. So we need to think about what we're doing without being on autopilot or being influenced by other people. And I think the biggest thing is when you're alone, you're thinking about that consequence, because if something happens, it's going to fall back on just you. There's not a group to protect you.
You're talking about the social media online. This is all also have some impact related with the social media and the internet.
Absolutely. We're seeing it a lot there. And to be honest, I feel like the mob mentality online is actually even more concerning to me, just because of the way I'm seeing it with clients in our office and in our clinic. It's the reach, you can't control the reach when it's online. So if it's mob mentality like on the playground, you know that it's only the people in the playground that saw it. And once it's done, it's done. But online, you can't control that reach. It can go from our city to our country to another country. It can end up in mom or dad's email inbox, right? So you can't really control the reach there, which is a big thing, which is super concerning. I feel like that also leads to a lot of these kids to be overwhelmed because they can't control the reach. They sometimes can't remove it because now people have screenshots or other things, and that becomes really overwhelming. And we've seen a rise in suicide around online bullying. So it definitely is, I think, a big concern and something we should be talking about.
And what can we do to try to avoid this kind of situations?
I think with that, I know a lot of people think of punishment, I'm going to take things away, but you know, taking away their phones or taking away their things doesn't really help with getting them to have the skills and the ability to deal with those situations. So what we always do, and we do it in clinic through our groups that we have for kids and teens, but teaching them the social skill and their own like emotional regulation and coping strategies to deal with those situations. So what I mean by that is giving them the tools to learn how to speak up for themselves, so to communicate confidently and assertively. You also want them to get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations or situations. You don't always have to agree with people, and sometimes you're not going to think that it's right, and it's okay to stand up and have that conversation. Another really big thing is just general coping strategies. So when we feel stressed or when we feel pressure, how can we deal with this in a way that we're not going with the mobs and we're not doing something that isn't what we actually want to do and isn't something that we actually align with. So a lot of it is teaching kids those social skills, those emotional skills, and just that inner confidence and leadership.
Like you were saying, there's a pattern related with a group of individuals of this kind of bullying.
Yeah, the pattern, I mean, for a lot of them, if we're looking at them lacking those social skills, right? So, or those, basically them having those antisocial behaviors, and as well as not having strong bonds. So that can even be within the home. So if they don't have a strong bond with their parents or with their family, and if they don't have strong bonds with other individuals, they're going to be more likely to give in to this mob mentality, because it's just human nature. We crave that connection. So that's another really big thing, is looking at those patterns. How can we strengthen our relationships and our bonds with our kids? How can we make sure that they have the social ability to succeed socially so they're not trying to find it in the wrong avenues?
Discipline could be the solution.
Discipline, I mean, I think that's typically where people go, is how am I going to discipline my child so that they know that it's wrong? But I find with discipline, we're sometimes missing the mark. I think it is a good logical consequence. If you don't know how to handle yourself online, then naturally we're going to remove your phone or your computer, which makes sense. But I think there's more than that. It's now also having those conversations around the impact. So you did this and you said this. How did it now affect this person, right? How is it making them feel? And I think relating it back to putting them in that person's shoes and getting them to understand perspective. How would you feel on the other side of that? There's been a lot of cases, even at schools and stuff, where there's this mob mentality and it's uploaded and everyone's seeing it and sharing it, and it has a really negative effect.
So what can we do to try to change it?
I think just general conversations, especially if we're talking about online safety, those safe social conversations, and we have a lot of them at the clinic just because it's such a big conversation and issue right now, but having conversations with your kids about not only their online footprint and the impact, but even just in general, you know, being around a group of people, how our behavior or sometimes our lack of behavior influences a situation, right? So just really getting them to understand that impact is big.
That case in such question was really complicated.
Yeah.
Many Canadians, they were really upset with that kind of the situation in our modern society.
Absolutely. Well, and I saw that video too, and even when I saw it, I was shocked by it. It's, you know, it's an older woman, you know, and it's little kids and they're attacking her, and you can even see it in her face in that video, how surprised and shocked she is by those, like, the turn of events and how that played out. So I think that's even another conversation just around general respect for people in general and authority. And I think it's great because we're in a point now in society where we want our kids to speak up and to be independent and, you know, to kind of have a voice, but there's also that respect factor, and I think sometimes it's a thin line there. So I definitely think going back and having those conversations around how to treat other people in general, but also how to treat older people or seniors or adults is something that we need to revisit.
Respect and the education that we learn at home, and so like Toronto, it's big. Many parents, they have 2, maybe 3 jobs, and sometimes they don't have time for educate the children.
Absolutely. Well, and it's actually something, so for us, we actually run groups on the weekend for kids and teens. And for a lot of our parents, because you're right, it's hard if they have multiple jobs or multiple children. It's another expectation that's put on them. So there are actual organizations that offer this kind of skill and this kind of opportunity where you can register your kids and they come and they learn the proper social skills, they learn the proper emotional regulation skills, they do it with a group of kids, so they get to actually enjoy it and put it into practice. So there's other alternatives, because especially today, I mean, there's so many other things that are going on that it is sometimes hard, or sometimes parents don't even know where to start or how to do it. So it is looking for those outside resources.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.